Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna Church. I am Pastor Dave Sains, Senior Shepherd at Living Manna Church. You are part of our Wednesday night Bible study, and I welcome you. I am so grateful that you chose to hang out this Wednesday night with us to open up God's Word, to get into it, to try to find out what is inside and how it applies to us. So, with all of that, today is, we haven't been here for a while. It seems, well, we haven't done our Wednesday night Bible study. That is in the book of Romans. It seems for at least a minute, right? We just went through all of the feast days and all sorts of different studies and things. So we're going back to the book of Romans, back to where we were just a few weeks ago before the holidays came upon us. So exciting study for tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that you are too. Got some interesting stuff to share with you tonight. But let's start off tonight with a word of prayer, and then we'll jump right into the scripture. Father, we love you. We thank you. We pray that you would give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that is willing to obey. In Yeshua's name. All right, so here we go. We are in the book of Romans. Like I said, it's been a minute or so, and let me just take this second to kind of do a little bit of a commercial here. Certainly, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the study. If you're nourished by it, if you're fed by it, share it with somebody. In the comment section, definitely comment. Let us know where you're watching from, who you are. We would really appreciate that. And let me just do this here. So sorry, guys. So anyway, so be part of the conversation, be part of what we're doing. We thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the red button. If that little thing that says on YouTube, subscribe is red, you're not subscribed. So please press that button and be subscribed to our channel. So this way, every time we post new content, you will be made aware of it, and then you can be partake in it. So, as I said, we are in the book of Romans. It's been a minute since we've actually looked into the book of Romans with all the holidays and everything that's come up, which have been absolutely incredible. We had a great time talking with everybody online, great time having our conversations with people from LMC from all over the place, both here in the Bronx and across the country. Actually across the world. We thank you guys for your participation. A reminder that our next Zoom call is going to be on October the 22nd. That's a Shabbat Eve, a Shabbat night. So we invite you all to be part of that, to join us in the conversation. And Sister Jessie and Brother Sean are going to be sort of leading that conversation. So I'm looking forward to it, listening to what Yah has given to them, put on their hearts to share with us. So, all right. So all the commercials are sort of out of the way for a second. Let's jump into this. Here is our study for this evening. And like I said, it's been a minute. So, now I know if you're watching these studies sort of one after the other, edited afterward, it seems like, just 10 seconds has gone by. But for we who have been studying this and going week after week after week, a couple of weeks have gone by. So I want to do just a little bit of review just to get us caught up, because this is really important information that I want to share with us tonight. But tonight's study is called Romans. Well, the number is Romans number 23. 23 weeks. I think we've got maybe another 2 weeks or so left of the study. But this is Romans number 23, and the subtitle for it. I want you to notice the subtitle. This is really important. The law of liberty. However, question mark. Because as we get into this tonight, you're going to see, now if you have like a King James or an NIV or RSV or ESV, whatever English type of version that's really comes from the Greek scriptures and from that time on, it might have a subtitle over this particular chapter, Romans chapter 14, that has this title. Mine does. That's why I used it. It says the law of liberty. But we're going to find out that by the end of tonight, that's actually kind of deceiving as to what this is actually really about. Now, of course, here is our verse for today, Romans number 23, law of liberty. And let me just make this a little bit bigger so that everybody can see it. Here is Romans chapter 14 and verse 6, which is our kickoff verse. So what I want you to kind of keep in mind as we go through this study, Romans chapter 14 and verse 6 says the following: He who minds the day, minds it to Yehovah. And he who does not mind the day, to Yehovah, he does not mind it. He who eats, eats to Yehovah, for he gives Elohim thanks. And he who does not eat to Yehovah, he does not eat, and gives Elohim thanks. Now, I know if you take that scripture just all by itself, it seems really confusing. What in the world is the apostle Shaul, Saul, Paul? What is he actually talking about? Well, it's a lot. It's a lot. But in order to really kind of understand where chapter 14 is taking us, it is imperative, especially since it's been just a little bit, since we've actually gotten together. It's imperative that we take a look at some of the scriptures or some of the content before this. Here is just a little bit of review, I guess, for everybody. So follow me with this. Again, all of you that have been part of the study, this should be this. You guys should understand this. You guys should know this. And I'm sorry, let me just turn this up here. Got a couple of different things going on here at the same time. All right, so Romans chapter 9 and verse 13. Actually, Romans chapters 9 through chapter 13. I just want to summarize them for you. So again, you can go back to listen to the other studies and sort of, get the running theme. But for those that are joining us tonight, Romans chapter 9 through chapter 13 is basically an instruction given to the people at Rome, at that congregation. Remember, this is specific to that congregation. And of course, it can be extrapolated out to other congregations, but it's specific to that congregation. This is instruction to them from these chapters, 9 through 13, on how to live as brethren, how to be together in Yeshua Messiah, because the dynamic has changed. The whole story has changed. It is not just to the Jew the way the Jew would have thought about it in the first century. But we know right off in the beginning of Romans, it says to the Jew first and also to the Gentile, to the nations. So the nations are now coming into faith. And we're talking about proselytes, people that have come to an understanding in Yeshua, but we're also talking about people that knew little to nothing about who Yah is, coming into faith. And we have a clash of cultures. Two very, very different groups of people. One called the cultivated vine, and by cultivated, all that means, so you understand that when you read that in Romans 11, when it says there is a cultivated vine or cultivated branches, it means that they are attached to the Torah. They have the instructions of Yehovah. Excuse me. Whether they have added to it, whether they have taken away from it, whatever they've done, they are still cultivated because they have the truth. At least at their fingertips, they have the truth. But then there are other branches we were introduced to that are wild olive branches, meaning they have no connection to God's instruction, to God's word. So a lot of this is absolutely brand new. And so there is this sort of clash of cultures that is going on inside of this congregation in Rome. And not only the congregation in Rome, the congregation in Ephesus, the congregation in Smyrna, the congregation in Philippi, and every single congregation that there was, they were all experiencing this dynamic of people coming in who do not have the background, the understanding, the traditions, and yet they love the God of Israel And so there is this learning process that has to go on. So that's quite literally what chapters 9 through 13 is instructing them that now that these branches are grafted in, and they were wild branches before, but now that they're grafted in, they are sucking up the root, they're sucking up the true vine. They are beginning, and this is really important, they are beginning to understand Torah. Meanwhile, the branches that are already there, they understand Torah. Now, they may have all sorts of traditions and everything else. We're going to get into that a little bit tonight. But they are the cultivated vine. And so you've got these two groups of people mixing, and that is what chapters 9 through 13 is trying to, what Shaul is trying to encourage and teach, and he's telling them how to live with one another and how to respect the authority and the people that are there. Chapter 13, you can look back on it and check it out. But chapter 13, and I know in probably 90% of our Bibles, if you look at the subtitle over it, it'll say something like submitting to the government, right? That is not what chapter 13 is about. Not even close to what chapter 13. I know that's how it's used. That's how it's taught. That's how people are encouraged to understand in our modern religious world. But that is not what chapter 13 is about. Chapter 13 is not about submitting to Gentile governments. It is about submitting to kingdom leadership, to those who Yah has put in charge of ministering this gospel. Because don't forget, again, a culture clash. This is something they're not used to. They don't understand. So there's a big learning curve, if you would, or a big time of learning that needs to go on before these new believers who are coming in, both Jew but especially those who are proselytes or those who are Gentiles. There needs to be time for them to catch up. And the sad thing is that instead of catching up historically, we wound up going a different direction. But that's another message, another day. Here is chapter 13 and verse 14. Because I really want you to kind of think about this as sort of the summary of chapter 13. Chapter 13 and verse 14 says, "But put on the Master Yeshua Messiah, and make no provision for the lust of the flesh." And here it is. I put it in yellow because I want to explain what it means to put on Yeshua Messiah. To be clothed with, to copy his example, to put on your white robes, or what we talked about this past weekend on our weekend message, to put on your priestly garments, to go through the consecration process of becoming a priest. That's what it means to put on Yeshua Messiah. So really, sort of as a summary at the end of chapter 13, what Saul is saying is as you learn as Gentiles, former Gentiles, let me make that clear, former Gentiles who are now grafted in, plus those who already are the natural branches, as you learn to get together, remember Yeshua is our example. He showed us how to live the Torah, the instruction. Because we say Torah, people get all twisted. They think, they automatically think, I don't know what they think, but they think something kind of awkward. Torah just means instruction. Yeshua showed us how to live Yah's instructions correctly. And this is what Saul is talking about, but this appears in multiple books. And here's just one to sort of give you a summary. Another writer, John, obviously the Apostle John, but he says the same exact thing in the book of 1 John chapter 2 and verses 4 through 6. It says, "The one who says, 'I know him,' and does not guard his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards his commands, truly the love of Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him." And here it is, verse 6. I got that highlighted just so everybody can kind of see it there in red. The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk even as he, of course, the he there we're talking about is to walk as Yeshua walked. So, I'm sorry, guys, just trying to do something on my computer here. Make sure I'm at the right spot. All right, so here we go. To walk as Yeshua walked. So this instruction that Saul is giving us in chapter 13 to put on Messiah is explained in a little bit more detail in 1 John chapter 2, that to put on Messiah means to do what he did, to take him as the example, listen to his instruction, and live the way Yeshua lived, worship the way Yeshua worshiped. He becomes the very example. So all of this just kind of really as review, this thought of the mixing of these two groups who traditionally and historically hate each other. I mean, they despise each other. And now in Yeshua Messiah, these two groups, the way Ephesians chapter 2 says, these two groups, these two different peoples are now going to be made one. And that's sort of the, and I don't know what other word to use to describe this, and I don't mean this in the wrong sense, but that's the magic of the whole thing. Of course, I don't mean it as magic, but that's the mystery of the whole thing. That two different groups, so different by the first century, so absolutely opposed to each other, are now being sort of melded together in the true vine. Okay, that's chapter 13, and really chapters 9 through 13, as just a sort of a quick review, if you would. So, chapter 14, then, which is where we are today, which is what we're getting into. And I know I've said this probably a half a dozen times already, but just like so many other chapters, chapter 14 is terribly misunderstood by many, by us, by me. I did not understand this. It took time to actually begin to understand what this chapter, what the whole book, what the whole story is actually about. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again before we jump into chapter 14, that there are two vital things I want you to hear. If you've learned anything from the ministry, from the teaching that we do here at LMC, I want you to walk away with these two things in the utmost. Number one, take Yeshua at his word. Listen carefully to what he is saying, because he doesn't mince words. He doesn't talk in ambiguities. He may talk in parables that are sometimes hard to understand, but you need to take him at his word. Again, pray, eyes to see, ears to hear. But what he says is vital to understanding the whole story. He is Yah. He is the God of Mount Sinai. So what he says is paramount, number one. Number two, or B, if you would on the notes there, B, whenever you read anything in our Bible, anything from any book, from any chapter, from Genesis to Revelation, you must read it in context. You must realize who the people are that he's talking to. What is the situation in the culture going on around them? What is happening historically? It must be understood in that context. Yes, there is an application that certainly follows us through history to where we are today. But if you really want to understand what Yeshua is saying, what the Bible is about, you must understand it in context. And if anything, that is probably one of the gravest errors that we make today, because we read everything and we think he's talking to us, that he's talking about our time. And there absolutely are some things, and yeah, he is talking about our time, or he's talking about whatever time will come after him. But a good portion of what Yeshua says, or what Saul or the others say, yes, has everlasting implications, but he is speaking to what is going on in that culture, in that time. And unless we understand it in that culture, in that time, it's almost impossible to then extrapolate that and say, okay, so how does that then relate to us? What should we be doing and or not be doing? So those two things, if you've learned anything, please, guys, learn that. However, there some grave errors. Like I said, chapter 14 is very, very much misunderstood. And it's because, like everything else we've said before, mindset. I'd say 8% that view this chapter are viewing it through a Gentile, the nations, a Greek, a Gentile mindset. We're trying to understand things that were written 2,000 years ago to a specific group of people, and we're trying to think that, okay, well, how does this apply to me? Let me understand it in my context, or let's understand it outside of a Hebraic context. And that has led us to just, all sorts of problems and issues, and that absolutely carries over to chapter 14. Remember what we just said about chapters 9 through 13, what they were about, these two groups coming together, because the theme carries over to chapter 14. Remember, chapter 13 is not about trusting government or anything like that. It's about trusting Yah's government. Trusting those people, Gentiles coming in, they're going to have to trust the teacher and the evangelist and the apostle, and people they would have never trusted before begin to understand and mold into one group of people called the house of Israel. So grave errors. And here's just two, the two major ones, if you would, that when most people read Romans chapter 14. And guys, I've had this. I've had people, sort of contact me online or even, people that I know that read this and I've talked to before, just automatically jump to these conclusions and then get upset, when you have any other kind of concept or idea because they're trying to understand this in the culture in which we live, not in the culture to which it was written. And here are the two, at least in my mind, the gravest errors that we need to be aware of as we read chapter 14. One, many use chapter 14 as a justification for eating unclean food. Example, meat. And by meat, pork. And again, I've had people, really get at me, talking about this, say, look, he says all meat is good. Okay, I get that. It does say that, but it doesn't mean all meat if you understand it in context, in the rest of the book. If you are putting on Messiah and doing what he has done, what he has said. So it's used as a justification for eating unclean. We'll deal with that in a second. But also, this is sort of like the 1.2, if you would, not to judge other people on the food that they eat. This chapter is used for that. I've heard it multiple times. You can't say anything about what meat I'm eating or food I'm eating, whatever it comes from, whatever, clean or unclean. This chapter says that's not part of it anymore. All things are clean. We're going to see as we go through this, when you understand it in context, you're going to realize, oh my goodness, no, that is not what it is saying. And again, I know some of you guys already know this. We've gone through this in so many other contexts. B, however, is that it is also used to justify other worship days. This is a big one. This is a really, really big one. It took me a while to wrap my mind around this too, because we're all growing. We're all learning. Nobody's got this thing down pat. We're all trying to learn, trying to understand things properly. And this chapter is absolutely used to justify other worship days, i.e., other holy days, or what we would say today in our English vernacular, holidays. And of course, we're talking about Christmas and Easter, but it's not just Christmas and Easter. It's actually lots of other things too. And you'll see as we go through this, but this chapter is used to justify doing those other things, that those things are okay, that we can do this. It doesn't matter the day, it doesn't matter the celebration, that you can go ahead and do these. That chapter 14 justifies that particular perspective. Well, we're going to see in just a second that I'm sorry, but that is just not the truth. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. So again, this is paramount. I said this before. You need to understand what Yeshua said, but you need to listen to what Yeshua said, but you also need to read in context, in the context to what is going on. And here is just some context that I want you to kind of keep in your mind before we even read chapter 14, before we even go any further. I want you to keep this context in your mind. Number one, or A, or whatever point it is. Yeshua is the Elohim from Genesis to Malachi. That's who he is. He is the God of Mount Sinai that became flesh. He is the God who gave the Torah from Mount Sinai to Moses, to the children of Israel, but to Moses in particular. That you got to have, if you do not have that as the first context for whatever you are reading, we'll go askew. We'll go off in different directions and tangents and perhaps in error. So that's the first concept of context that I want you to remember. Number two, or B, Yeshua / Elohim, he is Elohim in the flesh, does not change. This is as equally important to the concept of realizing he is the God of Mount Sinai, that our God does not change. And of course, here's just a couple of verses that kind of, point to that. Here's Malachi chapter 3 and verse 6, which says, "For I am Yehovah." In most of our Bibles, if you have just regular English Bibles, it says, "I am the Lord." Every time you see capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, it is the word Yod He Vav He, or properly pronounced Yehovah. So, for I am Yehovah, I do not change. Here's Hebrews chapter. So we got for those that want to divide New Testament, Old Testament. Okay, so here we've got Malachi, absolutely part of what we call the Old Testament. And here we have Hebrews chapter 13:8. And if he is the God of Mount Sinai, understand what's being said. Hebrews 13:8, Yeshua Messiah, the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I know lots and lots and lots of groups and churches and preachers, quote that verse all the time, not really understanding what it actually means. It is connecting or telling us that Yeshua is the Aleph and Tav. He is the God of Mount Sinai. So that's context. That's one thing I want you to kind of keep in your mind as we go into chapter 14. Next, I want you to remember this, because we've kind of just, I don't know what we've done with this. We've thrown it out. We've made him other races. In pictures, we've made him from Europe. We've made him blonde haired. We've made him blue eyed. Yeshua is Jewish. He is of the tribe of Judah. That's who he is. You cannot deny that. You cannot subtract that. You cannot take that away. That is who he is. He is of Judah, and he is, as the God of Mount Sinai, he is the King of Israel. Again, just context. Remember that. He is the king of Israel. Saul, or Shaul, as I often say, Paul, he is also a Jew. He is also of the people of Judah, a Benjamite, but of the people of Judah. And besides that, I want you to keep in mind, he is a Pharisee. He's got all this Pharisaical training. It's still there. There's a lot he understood and learned that was good in his Pharisaical training. Not all of it, obviously, but a lot of it. Yah chose a man who studied, who knew, who understand, to give to him, because he had that foundation to help him understand the mysteries of the kingdom that most others did not understand. So context, Saul, the guy who's writing this book, is in fact of Benjamin, or an Israelite, or really of Judah of his day. And here's the most important one I want everybody to remember. I know I said this way back when we first kind of started off this thing, but here is, this is a very, very important point. The congregation that Saul is writing to in Rome, because it's called the book of Romans, right? And we kind of just, figure when we read the book of Romans or read any other book that he's writing to a church, just kind of like the way people are today. That's not so. The congregation at Rome is a synagogue. It is a synagogue, people. It is full of Jewish believers in Yeshua, as well as Gentile proselytes, people who already came they loved or they wanted to know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now they're understanding that the Messiah of the God that we love is in fact Yeshua. He has come. So this is a synagogue that is predominantly full of Jewish believers, Benjamites, Judah, whatever other tribes that were around at that time. They were Jewish believers in Yeshua mixed with Gentile proselytes who have understood a lot about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now are understanding about Yeshua. But also, it has in it non-proselyte Gentiles, people that are coming from the nations that are starting to hear this and they want to know. So you've got people who know a lot, you've got people who know some, and you've got people who know nothing, except that Yeshua is Messiah. And these Gentiles, so again, I want you to make sure that as you read this for context, we don't put where we are today into this book, because that's ingenuous. That is not who it was written to, how it was written to, the culture it was written to, and the context to which it was written to. It was written to a synagogue. So that is paramount in understanding who we should be today, but why this message is. So it's not a Christian church the way we would understand a Christian church today. Of course, by Christian church, we mean a Gentile church, something devoid of anything Hebrew, something that says that which came before has nothing to do with me. It's something brand new. It is not the way you and I understand it today. And that's the way 99% of the people sort of interpret this book, and not just this book, all of the Berit Hadashah, the New Covenant writings, the apostolic writings. They're not written in a vacuum. They are part of a story that has already come before and is now giving us the mysteries, the things unknown about what came before. So with all of that, here we go. Here is chapter 14. So with that context then, I want to read to you chapter 14. We're going to go all the way through it real quick. However, I want to read it to you from the perspective of the way we look at church today. The way as a 21st century, or really, 10th century, 12th century, if they had access to Bibles, that probably about 300-400 years, 500 years after Messiah, the Gentile groups began looking at this story. And of course, certainly it is most prolific in our day and age. So normally, in red is normally scripture that I want to emphasize for you. And then in yellow is sort of my commentary on it. Well, I thought, at least for our first reading through, I didn't put the commentary in yellow. I put it in, I don't know what that is, pink or whatever it is, because it's not my commentary, but it is the way that this chapter is traditionally, and right now, as a practice, the way it is interpreted by people within the religious world today that believe, that confess that Yeshua is Messiah, that he died on the cross for us. Now, it may not be the concept of Yeshua the way we understand it, but you understand what I'm saying. So with that, everything you see in purple is sort of a commentary, but it's a commentary on the way this chapter is normally interpreted. And it is interpreted outside of the context of everything we just said. Outside of everything we just said, including what happens in chapters 9 through 13, the molding of these two groups. This is taken as something totally separate, identifying or trying to identify with who we are in the modern world. But you'll see as I go through this, let me just go through it and we'll see what happens after that. Here's chapter 14 and verse 1. And it says, and receive him. Now remember, this isn't separate from chapter 13. This is the next thought that Saul is having. And receive him who is weak in the faith, in belief, not criticizing his thoughts. One indeed believes to eat all food. And here's the commentary. Here's the thought. Here's the thought process of today. He's saying all food is clean. He just said it. Don't criticize someone who wants to eat whatever they want to eat. All food is clean. Again, I'm trying to, in the way it's looked at today, I'm not telling you this is what it says, but this is how many view it. One indeed believes to eat all food. All food is clean. But he who is weak eats only vegetables. You started to think about that. It's like, wait a minute, but let's just go on. He that eats, let him not despise him who does not eat. And he that does not eat, let him not judge him who eats. For Elohim received him. And here's the concept. Eat whatever food, so long as you eat it in faith. Pray over it, bless it, it's good. Verse 4. Who are you that judges another's servant? To his own master he stands or he falls. But he shall be made to stand, for Elohim is able to make him stand. Verse 5, one indeed judges one day above another. So we've gone from food to now days. One judges one day above another. Another judges every day alike. Let each one be completely persuaded in his own mind. He who minds the day, minds it to Yehovah. And he who does not mind the day, to Yehovah, he does not mind it. Here's the interpretation. Whatever day, whatever holiday, and I use that word loosely, maybe festival is a better word, whatever festival, whatever holiday you worship is up to you. It's in your heart. So long as you are doing it unto Yehovah, it's okay. That's the way it's understood. He who eats, eats to Yehovah, for he gives Elohim thanks, regardless of what the food is. Regardless if you're at Red Lobster or whatever, it doesn't matter. Regardless, as long as you pray over it, it's good. And he who does not eat to Yehovah, he does not eat, and gives Elohim thanks, just the same. So he's saying the two are the same. Verse 7, for not one of us lives to himself, and not one of us dies to himself. For both if we live unto the master, and if we die unto the master. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the master's. Here's the next part of chapter 14, verse 9. For unto this Messiah died and rose and lived again. So he's saying, for unto this, because of this food issue is what he's saying, or at least the way it's interpreted, because of this food issue, Messiah died and rose and lived again. In other words, he has changed both food laws and he has changed holiday laws to whatever you deem is a holiday or a festival. I want to stop using that word holiday. But to rule over both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you despise your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Messiah. For it has been written, as I live, says Jehovah, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to Elohim. Now I don't. We'll talk about this later, where this comes from in Isaiah. Then notice he says, who bow to Elohim. Each one of us, therefore, shall give account of himself to Elohim. Verse 13, therefore, let us not judge one another any longer, but rather judge this, not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block in your brother's way. In other words, don't put that law stuff, food and or holiday stuff, because those things are no more. Yah's law doesn't apply. Don't put a stumbling block in your brother. That's the way it's interpreted. Verse 14, I know and am persuaded in the Master Yeshua that none at all is common of itself, but to him who regards whatever be common, to him it is common. Is this, in other words, the interpretation of it is it's what you think, however you feel about it. What it comes from you. If you feel this is such, then it is such. If you feel this is good, then it is good. I've heard somebody just recently say, well, what is secondhand? What is sin? Well, it's whatever you think sin is. That's what's being said here. Whatever you think is common is common. Whatever you think is not is not. It's up to you. It's in your heart. I guess we would kind of say that today. I'm walking in the Spirit. God's just leading me, and I know. Here is the next verse in this chapter. Verse 15. And if your brother is grieved because of your food, you are no longer walking in love. You are legalistic. You're doing the law. This is outside of what we should be doing. Do not by your food ruin one for whom Messiah died. So you doing this stuff is going to ruin people, is what the translation or the interpretation would be today. Do not then allow your good to be spoken as of evil. For the kingdom or the reign of Elohim is not eating and drinking. So all the food stuff shouldn't be an issue at all. That, again, this is in purple, not in yellow, not in my commentary. But righteousness and peace and joy in the set-apart spirit. Verse 18, for he who is serving Messiah in these matters is well-pleasing to Elohim and approved by men. So then, let us pursue the matters of peace and the matters of building up one another. Do not destroy the work of Elohim for the sake of food. Again, think about what the implication of that would be. Forget all that food stuff. That's just a stumbling block. It's a burden. Forget about it. Do not destroy the work of Elohim for the sake of food. All indeed are clean. All food, all meats are clean. But evil to that man who eats so as to cause stumbling. You start doing those food things, you are causing people to stumble. At least the interpretation. Verse 21, it is good not to eat meat or drink wine, nor to do whatever by which your brother stumbles. Do you have faith, belief? Have it to yourself before Elohim. Blessed is he who does not condemn himself in what he approves. Again, the interpretation would be, so long as in your heart you think it's good, it's good. Verse 23, but he who doubts if he eats is condemned, because it is not of faith, a belief, and all that is not of faith or belief is sin, i.e., the food laws, the holiday laws, they are sin and they are a stumbling block to others. This is the general understanding across the board of what chapter 14 is about. Guys, I know it because I understood it that way. That's the way I saw it for years and years and years and years and years, until again we pray, give us eyes to see and ears to hear. So that's the way, again, most would kind of understand it. But I want you to understand, we need, again, let's get into some context here, because obviously I'm going to show you something different in a few minutes. What is being talked about in this chapter, this whole issue of food and meats and vegetables and holidays, and if it's a holiday for you, that's good. Don't put it, all of that stuff, while it is used again to justify all sorts of secular pagan holidays, saying so long as you do it unto the Lord, that is not what it means. Here is the cultural connection that we need to put this story to understand who and what Saul is talking to here in Romans. He is not talking about holidays per se. He's not talking about Moedim. Absolutely, he's not talking about Moedim. What he is referring to are fast days. Now, in the English, you may call it holiday, but it's not the same as an appointed time. This is not stuff that came from Moses, which came from the Yehovah, the God of Mount Sinai. This is stuff that becomes an important day later on. And it doesn't mean it doesn't take away its value, but it is not a feast day. This is, and this chapter then, which is a common cultural point of contention, both in the first century and in every century there has been all the way till today amongst our brother Judah. There is contention, there's conflict, differences of opinion on how you are to memorialize these fast days. Now, this was much more prevalent in the first century. Today, it's not as I'm sorry, I'm looking for something. It's not as prevalent, if you would, in let's say the Reformed Judaism. But if you look at the Hasidim, the very ultra conservative Pharisaic Judaism today, this stuff is still contentious. It's still out there, all sorts of different opinions, and that's kind of what was going on in the first century. These fast days, because there were fast days, not holidays in the English sense, but not holidays in the sense of these are Yah's appointed times, commanded by Yah through Moses. Now, picture you're a Gentile. Either you are a proselyte, so you know something about this, you've been doing this for a little while, but now you're understanding it in Yeshua, and then you're a Gentile who is not a proselyte, who's just coming in. You've got no idea. You're trying to learn Yeshua, and now there's these fast days, and if within Judaism itself, they're in conflict about how you celebrate these fast days, what it means to fast. How do you think people who has absolutely no concept of this, how do you think they're going to fare in this? This is what the chapter becomes about. Now, the whole idea of fasting, this isn't new. We see it in the gospel stories. Guys, there were weekly fasts. There were different days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You know, whatever the days were, there were set days of fasting. But not just days, there were days throughout the year, set, quote unquote, I'm using this word very, very loosely, holidays, or rather say festivals, good days, if you would, that were respected and memorialized through a fast. Here's Mark chapter 2, verse 18. Should be really, really familiar to everybody, at least the story part of it. It says, and the taught ones, the disciples of Yochanan, John the Baptist, his disciples, and of the Pharisees. I want you to notice that. It's not just John's disciples that have an issue with what's going on. It's the disciples of the Pharisees, which means John's disciples were doing and or fasting on the same dates, probably in the same way as the disciples of the Pharisees. I want you to notice that. That's really, really important to understanding the whole context here. So the taught ones of John and of the Pharisees were fasting. And they came and said to him, to Yeshua, why do the disciples of John and of the Pharisees fast, but your taught ones do not fast? Verse 19, and Yeshua said to them, are the friends of the bridegroom able to fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they are not able to fast. And verse 20, so important that we get this. You gotta get this. Look at verse 20. Look at what Yeshua says. Take Yeshua at his word. Literally, he says what he means what he says. Verse 20, but the day shall come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then they shall fast in those days. So is Yeshua separating his disciples, saying, no, that's not stuff we should be teaching and doing, that's Pharisaic, tradition? Or is he saying, while I'm here, there's no necessity for it, but when I'm gone, my disciples, they will fast? And again, we're talking about some specific biblical fast that happened throughout the year, which is the topic of Romans chapter 14. So here we go. Let's take a look. Here's our Zechariah chapter 8 and verse 14. Because I want to explain to you what fast he's talking about. When he says, my disciples are going to fast, this is what he's talking about. These are the fasts he's referring to. These are the fasts that John's disciples did and the fast that the Pharisees did. Zechariah chapter 8. Now again, there's weekly fast, there's monthly fast, there's yearly fast, there's all sorts of different traditions, but this in particular is what is being referred to here in Romans 14, but this whole concept of fasting and where this food issue and liberty stands and holidays stand and festivals and what is actually being told us in chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 8 and verse 17 says the following, and do not plot evil in your heart against another, and do not love a false oath. Now this is me in yellow commentary. So I'm trying to make it clear for you. When he says do not love a false oath, he's referring to wrong intent on the fast days. You'll see that in just a couple of verses. That's exactly what he's talking about. He says, I don't want your false oath. Don't be a hypocrite. In fact, for all these I hate. He's saying don't be a hypocrite. Don't do these things, but don't do them in the right if you're going to do them in the correct context. Declares Yehovah. And the word of Yehovah of hosts came to me, saying, thus says Yehovah of hosts. So he's talking about what? The fast. That's what the whole idea of a false oath was about, of not doing it properly. If you're going to do it as unto the Lord. If you're not going to do it, then, equally is what we're going to read in Romans 14. So here it is. One more time, verse 19. Thus says Yehovah of hosts, the fast of the 4th, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th months, and I highlighted this in red and made it big and bold so that you get this, are to be joy and gladness and pleasant appointed times for the house of Judah. These are fast days. These are mourning days. And he's saying these days are going to become days that are joyous to the house of Judah in the future. And they shall love the truth and the peace. Thus says Yehovah of hosts, peoples shall yet come. So not just the house of Judah, other people are going to come. Go back to Romans 14 or chapter 9 through 13. The Jew first and the Gentile also. Proselytes and non-proselyte Gentiles coming in. That's what he's talking about. This is Romans chapter 14. Peoples shall yet come, inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of the one go to another, saying, let us earnestly go and pray before Yehovah and seek Yehovah of hosts. I myself am going, and many peoples and strong nations shall come and seek Yehovah of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yehovah. When? How? According to the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month, the fast of the 7th month, and the fast of the 10th month. There's going to come a time when both Jew and Gentile are going to realize what these days are really about. As much as they are fast days throughout history, he's telling us these are going to be joyous times at some point in the future for both Judah, what was Judah, and what is or what was the Gentiles, now together, one tree, grafted in branches, as well as natural born branches, growing together. This is exactly what Romans chapter 14 is about. The 4th fast that he is referring to, you need to understand it to understand the context of Romans 14. The fast of the 4th month, the 5th month, the 7th month, the 10th month. I think I might have said it before incorrectly, but there it is up on the screen there. The 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th month fast. 4 different fasts. These were done in the 1st century and prior to the 1st century. Again, today it's changed. Today, like I said, Reformed Judaism doesn't do any of this stuff. They'll do Yom Kippur, but the Hasidim, they will. So you've got it's molded, it's changed. It's there's an evolution of this thing as time goes on, but we're reading it in the 1st century and in connection to who we are and what it will be in the future. So when it says the fast of the 4th month, now these are, of course, are the Babylonian names of the months that are used today. I mean, look at what the name of the 4th month is. Tammuz, all right? I mean, need I say more when a month is called Tammuz? And, don't think we're any better because all of our months are all named after gods too, including the days of the week. They're all named after God. So, let's not beat up, I guess we can't beat up Judah too much because we've done the same thing. But here it is. The 4th month is called Tammuz. The day that it's talking about is the 17th of Tammuz. That's one of the 4 fasts we just read in Zechariah. The 5th month is the month Av. And the day or the fast that it's talking about is the 9th of Av, but there's more to it than just the 9th of Av. We'll get there in a second. The fast of the 7th month is Tishri, and in particular, Tishri the 10th. And the fast of the 10th month is Tevet, in particular, Tevet the 10th. Now, what does all that mean? Here's just some explanation. Hopefully you guys can see it. It's up on the screen nice and big so you guys can copy this. The fast of the 4th and the 5th month. Again, the 4th month is the month of Tammuz, but it is on the 17th day of the 4th month, Tammuz, that there was a fast. It is in recognition of, or it is in remembrance of. It's not a feast day. It's not an appointed time, but it's it's an important thing to remember. And I understand why it becomes a fast day, because here we read it in Zechariah. It is the day Moses broke the tablets of stone. Wow. We're talking about golden calf here, guys. We're talking about the beginning. We're talking about, yes, I'm going to wipe you out. The day that the Torah was broken needs to be a fast day. It is something that even the disciples of Yeshua, when he is gone, need to understand and recognize, and will one day become a day like the appointed times, a day of joy, a joyous day. The day the tablets of stone are broken is memorialized as a fast day on the 17th of Tammuz. However, it is also the day of the first and second temple attacks, the breaches of the wall. They recorded the day the walls were breached and people got in. And of course, the 17th of Tammuz, the breaching of the walls, eventually leads in both the first temple under Babylon, at the time of Babylon, or under Rome. Both of them lead to the destruction of the temple. That is a fast day. That's a big event. We've talked about this before in all our end times revelation stuff. That is the destruction of Jerusalem. 70 day is the event of the whole Bible. The thing yes, Yeshua coming eventually to rule and reign, but the event is the destruction of Jerusalem. And here it is. It is supposed to be a fast day. It is the memorial of the Babylonian general Nebuzaradan. Of course, it's Nebuchadnezzar, the guy that's the king, but the king didn't go all down to Babylon. He sent his generals. So Nebuzaradan is the king, the general, who on Tammuz the 17th, the fourth month, the 17th day, breaks into Jerusalem, stops the offering. Twice daily, there's a morning offering, morning oblation, and an evening oblation. He stops it, puts it to an end. That's a memorial day. That's a fast day. It is the same day. This is crazy, but this is true. It is the same day, much later on after Babylon, when the Greek general, and I think spell check might have changed his name. It sounds like that, Apotamotus. The Greek general Apotamotus, who was acting under the guise of Antiochus Epiphanes. Remember, he's the king, but he's not going to go down to Judah. He's going to send his generals to go down there. Well, General Apotamotus, that's the day he burned the Torah in front of everybody in Jerusalem. That's a fast day. On that same day, that is the 4th of Tammuz, again, forward fast through history, another, couple hundred years, the Roman general Titus, under the Emperor Vespasian, broke through the first layer of walls into Jerusalem, eventually leading to the destruction of the temple. That day, the day the walls of Jerusalem were breached and began this event, guys, that's a fast day. These traditions, because that's what they are, they're traditions. But again, remember we said a couple of weeks, maybe last week, about traditions. Not every tradition is wrong or bad. We've got to judge it by the rest of the Word of God. These traditions, these fasts, are part of, if you would, the putting on of Messiah. The new clothes, the weddings, of understanding what this whole story has been about to get us to when we will be that bride, where there will be that celebration. Traditionally, what winds up happening is Judaism of its day takes these fasts and they put their own traditions, their own spins on it. And you can see, if we're supposed to put on Yah's clothes, and we're supposed to be part of Yah's wedding feast, and it's supposed to be a celebration for us, look at what Judah did with these things. To them, during these fast days, you weren't allowed to wear new clothes. There was no such thing as weddings during the fast days. Nobody got married. There were no celebrations. You couldn't even cut your hair. It was as though you were mourning, as though someone had died. That's the way that these events were memorialized. And you know what? I think that's good. I think that's when you understand what these days actually mean, not feast days, but fast days. Here is the next one. So we got the fourth and the fifth month. And now we've got here's the fifth and the ninth month. I didn't put the fifth in there, but here's the fifth. A bad report on the 9th of Av, in the fifth month, on the 9th of Av, because that's the day that it's that the fast. It's not even just the 9th of Av that is a fast day, both in the first century and again by Hasidim today, but it's a 9-day fast. It's from the 1st of Av all the way to the 9th of Av. And from a biblical historical perspective, even from the first or second temple, this was always a memorial of the bad report that the spies brought in. You know the story, Moses sends out spies. There's, from two from every tribe. Of course, Jacob and Joshua and Caleb, they come back with a good report. But the other spies all say, yes, even though Yah said, I'm going to take you into the land, you're going to get the land, they all said we can't do it. That's a bad day. That's a fast day. That got them walking around in the desert for 40 some odd years. That's a fast day. That's something that should stick in our minds as believers, whether we are natural branches, grafted in, it's something that should stick in our mind. Now, as I said, and I put this in red so that you get this, because I don't know how far I'm going to get with this message today. We're already at 8:40 something, so I'm going to get as far as I can. What I can't cover, we're just going to go back and we're going to pick it up next week. But I want you to get this. Remember this. Remember this. Remember this. Remember this. In the 9 days from Av the 1st to Av the 9th, this fast that you went on, there was an argument. There was contention amongst Jews themselves, and certainly in chapter 14 of Romans, as to during this fasting, because it's 9 days of fasting. So fasting doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of all food. There were those who fasted just meat. And by fasting meat, they just ate vegetables. There were those who said, no, I don't want to eat vegetables. We're just going to have meat. This is the context of Romans 14. When you get into the whole meat and all the rest of that. So I want you to see this was something that went on way before the first century, was still going on. And now these people who are coming in, who are wild olive branches, are trying to adjust to what all of this means and how does it reflect on us and what do we do? And so the issue becomes, as obviously it would, well, food, what am I going to eat? What should I eat? What should I not eat? You're telling me this, you're telling me that. Av the 9th was also the day that the first temple is actually destroyed. The first temple is actually destroyed on Av the 9th, and incredibly, on Av the 9th, again, this is future from what even Saul is writing about in Romans 14, but this is history to you and I. The second temple was destroyed by Rome. According to the Mishnah, the Talmud, on Av the 9th is the day Rome just plowed over the whole temple and made it a field. That's what Av the 9th is about. Yeshua, again, confirming the words of Yeshua, not one stone left upon another. Guys, that's a fast day. That's a big event. That's something we should all understand and understand the magnitude of what that actually means. So we've got the fourth, we've got the fifth month, the 7th month fast. Now, this should be familiar to some of us because what's in the 7th month? Yom Kippur. And what do you do on Yom Kippur? Well, you afflict yourselves, but what has the tradition become over the thousands of years? That you fast on Yom Kippur. This is the 10th day of Tishri, to afflict yourselves. Now, it is also prior to, as made into a fast day, It is the recollection or the fasting. It's called the Gedaliah fast, and it's in response to the death through Babylon, through the hands of Nebuzaradan, of the killing of the priest in the temple, the high priest Gedaliah, and his death, which precedes the destruction of the temple. So the killing of the priest is a fast day. That's a big day to try to remember. But Yom Kippur is a fast in of itself, also in the 10th month. And the idea, or the B part of this idea, or the number 2 part of this idea, is that from trumpets, from the beginning of the fall feast to Yom Kippur, the tradition is, still is today, that Yehovah will, this we're talking about Jewish tradition, true or not, I don't know, we'll find out, I guess, but actually I have an opinion about it, but Yehovah will decides who will live and who will die. From that trumpets to the time of atonement, the tradition is Yah is going to decide who dies and who lives, and he's going to condemn the wicked, and the wicked will die sometime in that year after Yom Kippur. And so those 10 days from trumpets to Yom Kippur are called the days of Teshuvah. And you're supposed to repent. You're supposed to try to, lay your life out, repent before Yah, come back to him. This is the tradition, even as it comes down to us today. There is a 25-hour fast. Now, it's different, again, today, where we are today in the 21st century than it was in Shaul's day. But here's just some of the stuff that goes on today. And it'll give you, I think, a little glimpse into how confused these wild branches must have been coming into a synagogue and trying to learn. Here is some of the things. No material possessions. Women are not allowed to wear makeup, make themselves up. I don't know why, but somebody maybe look this up, but you're not allowed to wear leather shoes. You can't wear leather shoes. I'm not sure what the significance. I'm sure it's some sort of tradition. No food, obviously, 25 hours, no drink, no bathing, no why. And the list kind of just goes on and on and on. You guys can look this stuff up. It's out there. It's on Google. You can find all this stuff. This is part of the fast. And this recognizes, because don't forget what happens in the 7th month after the resurrection of Yeshua, some 40 years later. That's the day the final walls to Jerusalem are breached. That's the day, that day of trumpets, that day of the fast. There's no more offering. That's the day Rome gets into the third. The Jerusalem was split up into thirds, 3/3 as a whole city. The last third of the city falls at that time. And of course, all the horror that goes on. So guys, that's a fast day. That's a day we should remember. We don't because we don't understand this stuff. We don't remember it, but that's a day we are supposed to memorialize. We're supposed to remember. It's not a feast day. It's a fast day. Okay, I got a few more minutes. Here's the 10th month. The 10th month is the month Tevet. And it's the 10th day of the month that is a Memorial Day. That is a fast day. Now, maybe some of you kind of knew some of the other stuff. Most people don't realize this, but the 10th month Tevet was the beginning of the Babylonian siege. So just like they marked the beginning of the Roman siege, they marked the beginning of the Jerusalem siege by Babylon, and it happened on the 10th month. Because now, for the first time. And this is big. The beast, because that's who it is, right? That's who Babylon is. The beast broke the walls of Jerusalem. That would be prophecy for what's going to come in the future, right? That's the whole story of Revelation. So this is a fast day. It is 8 months later after this day, on the 9th of Av, that of course the temple is destroyed. So that 10th month Tevet, the 10th day, is a fast day. Now, I want to read this so that we can, I want you to read along with me so you kind of get, I wrote it down rather than just kind of saying it off the cuff because I wanted to say certain things. But please, 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 please listen to this, guys. The fast of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th month including whatever weekly fast, because there were weekly things you would do during the week as well, Pharisaic tradition, but whatever. The fast of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th month were not Torah instructions, but were of great historical and prophetic significance, so as to be mentioned in Zechariah and Yeshua, telling us there is a day when we will have to do the fasts, and prophetic significance, and how to, or whether or not to honor these days, not as, and this is important, not as new holidays or holidays of other nations and other gods. That's not what Romans 14 is telling us. It's not telling us you can just go, celebrate other nations' gods and stuff. That's not what he's saying. He's saying to fast to honor these historical events that are of tremendous significance, both historically and prophetically, to the people of God, to understand what is coming, because there is a day, there's a time that these things are going to be turned to joy. And I don't even have time to talk about all of that today. Maybe another day we'll get into that. So one more time, but we're of great historical and prophetic significance, and how to, or whether or not to honor these days, not as new holidays, nor holidays of another nation or other gods, but as significant events in Yah's plan for Jerusalem and the temple, were historically a point of religious contention among the rabbis, and now with the proselyte Gentiles, as we're reading Romans 14, the proselyte Gentiles and other Gentiles now coming to faith in Yeshua. These established customs, the fastings, had to be ironed out among the natural branches, and then ironed out among the grafted in branches, who were, as we'll read in Romans, were considered the younger in faith, the weaker in faith. He's talking about the Gentiles coming in, not getting all of this, and then seeing the contention even amongst the natural branches concerning all of this. This is what Romans 14 is actually all about. So remember, Mark chapter 2, verse 18, Yeshua's words, and I put them down in blue just to pop out. That's just another color I chose, but it's just so you can see how important this is. And the taught ones of John and the Pharisees were fasting, and they came and said to him, "Why do the taught ones of John and the Pharisees fast, but your taught ones do not?" I'm going to skip all the way down to verse 20 for time's sake. But here's Yeshua. But the days shall come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then they shall fast in those days. And I think part of what he's saying is we will finally understand what those fast days are about after he raises from the dead, after we get the whole picture, after we read the Gospels. We'll begin to start to understand what those fast days are about and why they will become wonderful and amazing days in the future. But again, another message for another day. So now with context, I got a couple of minutes left. So now with context, with what we've just said as context, understanding what fast days are, what the food and the holidays that he's talking about in Romans 14 are actually about. Let's read through Romans 14 one more time. This time I'm going to leave in the pink, the stuff that's kind of believed today, but I'm going to add the commentary in yellow to put it in the context in everything that we just learned, and see which one makes sense to you. Here it is, Romans 14 and verse 1. And receive him who is weak in the faith, the former Gentiles, the grafted in branches, and the natural ones that you got a problem with. Not criticizing his thoughts. They don't understand the fast. They hardly understand the feast days. They don't even know Moses. They don't know the prophets. And now we're dealing with fast days. They don't understand everything yet. One indeed believes to eat all. Well, that was the controversy for the 9 days. Is it vegetables? Is it meat? One indeed believes to eat all clean food. They're not talking about eat all food. That's totally out of context. He's talking about a fast day amongst Judah for the history of Jerusalem and the temple. Why would God allow us to just eat whatever we want? One indeed believes to eat all, that you could eat anything, any clean food observances. But all food is clean, is what we hear. But he who is weak eats only vegetables. That's the tradition. That was the argument. That was the concept. Vegetables or meat. Vegetarian or meat. That's the fast. From the Av 1 to Av 9. He that eats, let him not despise him who does not eat. And he that does not eat, let him not judge him who eats. In other words, he's saying, it's not a commandment, guys. This is not a commandment. This is a fast day. It's not a commandment, so chill. Let's see. I just lost my spot. For Elohim received him. Again, what's put out there? Well, you can eat whatever you want, so long as you do it in faith. That's not what he's saying. When he says, don't mess with him who doesn't eat and him that does eat, it's not a commandment. It's not. Stop making it what it's not. Verse 4, who are you that judges another servant? To his own master he stands or falls, but he shall be made to stand, for Elohim is able to make him stand. One indeed judges one day above another. He's not talking about just picking out pagan holidays and saying, I'm going to worship God on that day. That's not what he's meaning. He's saying that let me do it again. For indeed judges one day above another. What day? The fast days, the 4 fast days, to recognize those fast days, to understand the historical, the prophetic fast day memorials and the significance of them to the overall story. Another judges every day alike. The young branches who had no idea what these mean, to them it's an average day until they learn what this is about. So if they don't honor it because they don't understand, that's not bad. They're still honoring whatever the day is to Yah. They are either fasting to Yah or they're not fasting to Yah. They don't get it yet. He's telling them, give them time. Verse says, let each one be completely persuaded in his own mind. He who minds the day minds it to Yehovah. It's not wrong to fast and memorialize Yah's plan. It's not wrong to not do it if you've got no idea of it and you haven't been taught yet. That's what's being said. And he who does not mind the day, doesn't understand, doesn't observe, to Yehovah, he does not mind it. Again, what we say, well, that means you can pick whatever holiday you want to worship. Guys, that's got nothing to do with this. That has nothing to do with the topic here. He who eats, eats to Yehovah, eats clean, whether you're eating clean meats or you're eating vegetables. That's what the topic is. For he gives Elohim thanks. Again, we hear thanks for whatever you eat. And he who does not eat, to Yehovah, he does not eat, and he gives Elohim thanks. Again, same topic, same concept. You do it or you don't. They don't know it, don't get on them. You know it, do it, they'll learn. The next verse, I'm trying to hurry up. We're running out of time here, but I want to get through this. Verse 7, it says, for not one of us lives to himself. In other words, we are all learning to put on Messiah. Just what we read in chapter 13, right? Learn to put on Messiah. That's what he's telling them. You don't live to yourself. You're supposed to be living as Messiah, and they will put on Messiah. As we learn, they will understand. And not one dies to himself. For both if we live unto the Master. And if we die, in other words, saying whatever we do with the understanding that we have as you're truly walking in Yah, whatever we do unto Yah. That is not a license to do pagan things unto Yah. That is so out left field. That has no place in the context of what's being said, in the culture of what's being said, in the historical position of what's being said. He is not talking about just making any day a day to go out and worship and worship Yah, to add pagan days to it. It says, therefore, whether we live or die, we are the masters. For unto this Messiah died and rose and lived again. To do what? To teach us to serve in righteousness, to learn, to grow, to memorialize, to understand, to obey, to love, to have the two branches that are separate and different from one another now begin to come together. That's what he died for. Not, as is believed today, to change the food laws and the holidays, to just, sort of make things that God never said as part of what we're supposed to do. To rule over both the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother? Why? He's telling the Jews in the synagogue, why are you guys, the natural branches, beating up the grafted in branches with tradition they don't get yet, they don't understand yet? Or why do you despise your brother? He's ignorant. The ignorant Gentiles, they don't understand. Have you ever seen somebody that's just impatient with a student that wants to learn, and the student just quite isn't getting it? Well, you got to be careful, because you can be so impatient that you're almost arrogant to them. Well, you don't understand. You don't know. That's what he's talking about here. For it has been written, as I live, says Yehovah, every knee shall bow to me and every tongue shall confess to Elohim. We'll deal with this another day. Each one of us, in red, guys, I put it in red. Each one of us, therefore, shall give an account of himself to Elohim. That's the bottom line he's saying here. As these two groups are coming together and they're molding together and they're learning and they're understanding, know that each one, because they have the foundational truth of who he is, each one's going to give an account for what they knew, what they understand, what they were growing in. Teachers go to teach, students ought to learn and become teachers and then disciple someone else. That's the process, but it takes time. Therefore, let us not judge one another any longer. Stop the bickering, but rather judge this, not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block, a tradition, a fast day on how to do it or how not to do it. Don't put that stumbling block in your brother's way. But what we've heard is don't put God's law as a stumbling block in your brother's way. Guys, those are, oh my goodness, the dichotomy of those two things. Here is the last one for today, because we're going to pause right here. I've gone over a lot. I'm like 2 minutes over, but I want to kind of wrap this up. Obviously, we're not going to get through this thing. We'll pick it up next week, but this is really, really an important chapter. This is a pivotal chapter. This wraps the whole book up together. So we're going to pause here for today, but I want to sort of summarize real quick. What we have read just now as we went through this, reading it in context, this is not a chapter about eating all meats, i.e. pork, rabbit, mouse, whatever. The list goes on and on and on. This is not a chapter about the privilege, the law of liberty, as we are told, to go ahead and do what you want to do. That's not what this chapter is about. This chapter is not a justification for celebrating pagan holiday festivals. I keep using the word holiday, I'm sorry, but celebrating pagan festivals. This is not a blanket statement that says that's okay, so long as you're doing it of your heart. That is not the context of what's being said. But what this is about, what this absolutely is about, is joining the two branches together and them learning to live together. One was uncultivated, so the uncultivated one has to learn to become cultivated together. This is what Romans 13, the chapter before, was telling us. And I'm going to leave you with this verse. Love, chapter 13, verse 10, love does no harm to a neighbor. Love is the fulfillment of the Torah. Love is the fulfillment of the Torah. Whew, lots of information. I listened to it again, a whole bunch of good stuff. We got more and more good stuff to go through. I hope that I explained it in a way that is easy to understand. This is just another part of what we're learning, another part of what we're growing in. These are important days, because when you understand their place in this grand story, it helps us understand the ending. It helps us understand what's happening, why we are, what's coming. And so these days are going to be turned into days days of rejoicing. And I understand why. I already got all sorts of studies I want to do on this, but another day, another time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I hope that you enjoyed that study. Don't forget tomorrow morning to join us for our morning manna. I know we've been a little messed up with the dates and stuff last couple of days. I'm so sorry. But we'll be on track for tomorrow. Check out our morning manna, of course, this upcoming weekend. Check out our hidden manna on Saturday at 10 o'clock. Brother Bax and I will be here to share some of Yah's word. The second commandment is what we're going to be talking about this upcoming week, and the Nehushtan. So definitely want to tune in for that. And of course, don't forget to join us on Sunday morning at 10:30 for our weekend service, 10:45 for our weekend service, where we're just going to continue to worshiping and learn, and got a whole bunch of neat stuff to share with you. So with all of that, guys, thank you so much again for hanging out with us. Everybody online, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Guys, God bless, and as always, shalom.